Mr. Falconer, you've seen this report that's calling for these deaths in Thunder Bay to be reinvestigated. This is in addition to 9 other deaths that are already being reinvestigated. What are your thoughts on this new report and what it contains?
Well, it's just another sad chapter in terms of the circumstances of the work of the Thunder Bay Police Service. Honestly, I think we are so far past the point of simply investigating or reinvestigating one death versus another. These are terrible tragedies. The families have been left with unanswered questions, cases so cold that it's likely impossible to ever get at the truth. Only in the circumstances of Indigenous people would this ever be accepted in this country. It's extremely discouraging and demoralizing. And how this police service is permitted to stay in business one more day is totally beyond me.
You know, the report also mentions there being 25 unsolved cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls that are sitting with the Thunder Bay Police Criminal Investigations Branch. You know, should those cases be reinvestigated by the Thunder Bay Police?
It's very important to understand what I'm about to say may sound extreme to some, but I actually opened an office in Thunder Bay in 2008. 14 years ago, because as far as I felt at the time, it was ground zero for human rights violations in this country. 14 years later, we're still talking about incompetently investigated deaths tainted by racism by the police. I mean, literally, I feel like a gerbil on a wheel here. And I would be irresponsible and dishonest if I didn't say the obvious. This police service needs to be shut down. There is little or no question in my mind as to why this is all happening. It's true. It reflects racism. But I think we need to cut to the core on what this is really about. First of all, there's some very good people that are Thunder Bay police officers that are professionals. There's also some very good people in the city of Thunder Bay that are good people and not racist. But the truth is that those who are actually in power in the city of Thunder Bay and the police service that currently exists, there's a strong attachment between the two. Put another way, the Thunder Bay Police Service, as we currently see it, is precisely the police service those in power in the city of Thunder Bay want to see. In other words, the reason they're not going to change is because those in power in the city of Thunder Bay want this police service. Protecting and being equitable and using an equitable lens with Indigenous people is not the priority for people who are in power in Thunder Bay. And so my point is, the only answer is to shut this miserable experiment down, create, a policing. The OPP is the obvious answer, not because they're perfect, but they're answerable beyond the borders of the city of Thunder Bay. That is, for the first time, Indigenous people could expect at least accountability, because there is none now. And this sort of ongoing saga of investigation and reinvestigation, it would never be tolerated outside the context of Indigenous deaths. I can tell you as a lawyer of 30 years experience, there would be a commission of inquiry, there would be hell to pay and people fired. And that's not happening. And there's a reason why. It's because Indigenous lives, quite simply, are worth less. And so we go on with this ridiculous, honestly, ridiculous theater. Let me give you an example. And I apologize, Melissa, but I do. I apologize for ranting. In June 2020, less than 2 years ago, Thomas Lockwood, the Ontario Civilian Police Commission administrator appointed to monitor the police board after they fired everybody in 2019, right? Mm-hmm. The OCPC, the governing body, fired all the Thunder Bay Police Board members, and they appointed this administrator, Thomas Lockwood. So in June 2020, less than 2 years ago, he announced that he was no longer going to be the administrator and gave a clean bill of health to the leadership of the Thunder Bay Police Service. To quote him, and this is quite extraordinary, to quote him, he stated the following. This is a quote. This is in June 23rd, 2020. Quote, "We have a strong, educated board with a plate of work. We have a strong police association dedicated to protecting its membership. We have an excellent chief and deputy chief committed to repairing relationships with the Indigenous community, Lockwood said. And that was June 2020. Flash forward, right? March 2022, the board is being investigated. The chief of police is being investigated. The deputy is being investigated. The entire service is in shambles, and we find out there is another layer of incompetent, racist police investigations. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you that the problem is endemic, it's chronic, and at the root is a rot, and that rot is permitted to go on because those in power in the city of Thunder Bay want it to go on. And so, sadly, and I say this sadly, you need to shut it down and start over and make a police service accountable beyond the borders of Thunder Bay. And the Solicitor General, Sylvia Jones, when she appoints the very same OCPC to investigate that gave the Thunder Bay Police the clean bill of health in June 2020, we're just down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So apologies, obviously on behalf of the DeBungy family, have strong views on this matter, but I've been watching it for years. And Indigenous people deserve better, they deserve respect, and it's not happening in Thunder Bay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would also say, too, I mean, police services have been disbanded for less than this. I would look not very far down the road from you to the Kenora Police Service, a few years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you make an excellent point. And it makes the point as to who's keeping this police service alive, who's got it stood up and who's got it breathing so you can't bring it down. And the answer is those in power in the city of Thunder Bay. Because you're quite right. Any other context, for far less, they would have been disbanded. Yeah. And the reason they're not is those in power in the city of Thunder Bay are not Indigenous, right? Yeah. And that police service has proven that they cannot be trusted with Indigenous lives. And each time we peel back another layer, I mean, we are chasing our tail trying to reinvestigate cases that are so cold they stand simply no prospect of the truth ever being disclosed. Yet we try to reinvestigate. Meanwhile, we have a police service that's continuing to investigate more Indigenous deaths.
Yeah.
I mean, what am I missing here?
Well, it's certainly hard to watch from afar, so I can only imagine how difficult it is to be in the midst of it and watching this. Julian, we thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us, and appreciate how passionate you are about it.
My pleasure, and have a good day.
Thanks, you too.